Thank you, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. We have so much great expertise on this panel, and I'm excited to have everyone hear about some great lessons learned from employee communications during COVID. Before we get started, I'm going to introduce our panelists today. So first up is Courtney Shaw. Courtney is the Senior Vice President of Communications at the Greater Des Moines Partnership, where she leads the public relations strategy and media relations to tell the DSM USA story loud, bold, and broad. Previously, Courtney was Director of Communications at Strategic America and executed public awareness campaigns for government and nonprofit clients. She serves on several boards and committees, including Healthy Birthday and Count the Kicks, Waukee Apex, United Way of Central Iowa, Community Foundation of Greater Des Moines, and is a member of the PRSA. Iowa chapter. Welcome, Courtney. Next up, we have Jenny Phan. Jenny is a corporate communications manager for Shive-Hattery, a 425-person architecture and engineering firm headquartered in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. With 12 design offices across Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Nebraska, Ohio, and Wisconsin, she leads and implements company-wide internal and external communication strategies. She is passionate about thought leadership and empowering design professionals to be confident and effective brand ambassadors. Thanks for joining us today, Jenny. Liz Sporer leads the talent acquisition and corporate communications team, overseeing recruiting, outreach, talent, brand, candidate, and team member experience and corporate communications responsibilities at Vermeer Corporation, a global industrial and agricultural equipment company doing the important work of feeding and fueling communities, managing resources, and connecting people. Prior to coming to Vermeer in 2012, Liz spent time in the healthcare and retail industries in various areas, including graphic design, visual branding, internet marketing, and public relations. In her current role, the corporate communications team is ultimately focused on the development of internal and external channels and content creation to help drive business initiatives and goals. It's great to have you with us, Liz. And last but not least, we have Hy-Vee Sprague, Communications Manager for Hy-Vee Inc. Hy-Vee has 20 years experience in marketing and communications and has worked in communications roles in a variety of industries such as agriculture, healthcare, financial services, and nonprofits. Hy-Vee often says that if you can think of a topic, she has likely written about it. She currently serves on the boards of both the Iowa chapters of the American Marketing Association and the Public Relations Society of America. So welcome, Hy-Vee. All right, so now you can start hearing from these experts. As you can tell, we have some great representation across a variety of businesses. So we should be in for a good conversation today, and we will reserve some time at the end for your questions. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, put them in the chat, or you can wait until we get to that period too. But we're gonna start off with a pretty entry-level question for the group, and then we'll dig in throughout the conversation. But Courtney, can you start us off with what role employee communications played in your company's COVID strategy or response?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Abby, first of all, for hosting this panel. I appreciate being part of it. And I'm really honored to be here with Jenny and Hy-Vee and Liz. I've seen the amazing work they've been doing. And so I'm really honored to be here and also to speak with everyone. So I think employee communications here at the Greater Des Moines Partnership was a top priority for our organization, as I'm sure it was for several others here on the call as well. I'm a big believer that internal communications is your #1 priority, because if your people aren't communicated with, and two, then they're not going to be able to do their best job, and they're not going to feel comfortable and have what they need to make decisions. And so any type of communications that we did, we always thought partnership team first, and then also how we're going to communicate externally with our different partners. I think at times at the very beginning, it was very much like go, 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 and then slowly became a little bit more strategic. But we definitely increased the number of emails going out to the team, definitely increased the number of all team meetings and department meetings and one-on-one conversations, hosting town halls and things of that nature. What we really did is we thankfully already have a really strong culture, and our values of our organization, collaboration, innovation, leadership, inclusion, vision, and civility. Those are already really strong in our organization. So we leaned heavily into those in our communications with the team and focused very much on mental health and being able to support our team in the ways that they needed as we kind of navigated this together.
Thank you. Jenny, can you share what role employee communications played in your company's COVID response?
Sure can, Abby. Thank you for the warm welcome and introduction earlier, and good to see such kind faces. It's been a long time. Well, COVID was just one of those things that hit everybody, and it was extremely fluid. Just echoing Courtney that in the beginning, we were probably all like, global pandemic, what? So, it was very much, how do we get in front of this? And so I think a lot of the things in the beginning were reactionary. No, I do agree with Courtney over time having to be more strategic, but because it was such an impactful and fluid situation, I think timeliness was important in the beginning. So we're very much trying to get real-time information out to everybody as quickly as possible because nobody knew what was going on. And as we all know, when there's a void, people fill that void with information. So we wanted to be the first ones to get the right information out. And so one of the things that we focused on was consistency and a central point of communication. So our company president was responsible for being the spokesperson for all company-wide communications and would be the one sending out all of our employee emails. In addition to that, we do have an employee intranet called Share that helped reinforce that messaging. And it was already the central hub that we had in place for like a touch point where you would get information. So we continue to use that as a central hub for anything COVID-19 related, safety programs, protocols, things of that nature.
Liz.
Great, thanks, Abby. So I'll echo a little bit of what Courtney and Jenny have just shared, but I think a few words that really stuck out to me as we think about our COVID response. One is education. To Jenny's point, there was just a lot of stuff flying around, and we have found that what we can do to educate our team, and that comes from us. They know us, they trust us, they're here with us every day, right? So we've spent years building trust with our team. So this was the exact time that then we needed to show up, and we needed to show up immediately for them. So how we could educate them, even if we didn't necessarily know what was going on, to explain what we did know and what we expected and what they should expect from us. So I think there was an educational piece. There's also an instructional piece. For those of you who don't know where I work at a manufacturer, so we had a number of team members who were required to work on site throughout the entire pandemic, as well as an entire group who were working from home. So even navigating some of those changes, and we'll get into more of those details later, but truly being instructional in what are the steps you need to take to do your work safely and to do it well and to do it efficiently and to do it effectively. Working together as teams, what does this look like now? So truly instructing our team how we can, move forward together. It's also important that we were partnering with our teams. So we actually created a space, like a survey for our team to give us feedback. So we wanted to know, there were so many unknowns, and we knew that we felt that at a leadership level, but you think about the production floor and the different homes and towns and communities that our team members are coming from, they all have different concerns too, right? Whether they have a child with special needs at home, or maybe they don't believe in COVID at all, or, their team member next to them isn't into masks, or, whatever it was, we wanted to create the space that we could get that feedback, because we wanted to understand what are they saying that then we need to either communicate, to clarify, or to help instruct and make decisions on based on later. So I think truly partnering with our team, we have about 3,800 team members here just in Pella, Iowa alone. So it's a lot of people. So to be able to really understand where they're at was important. And then lastly, one more thing, sorry, I can go off. I love corporate communications. I could talk about this all day. Anyway, lastly, I would say corporate communications, and I have seen this time and time again, is often a driver for whatever we're trying to implement, whether it is a goal, whether it is next steps, et cetera. people can talk and theorize for a long time. What communications can do is put together a draft. It can create something for people to respond to, for leaders to make decisions based off of. As corporate communications, we hold the values of our organization. We're the ones who talk about our talent brand. So how we can kind of set that up and then allow our leaders to make decisions based off of that is absolutely critical. And we saw it throughout the entire COVID experience and still are today through the ETS thing that we're working through. So, okay, that's all for now, thanks.
Thank you. Hy-Vee, what would you like to add?
Oh, well, thank you, Liz. I don't know if I can top that. I know the enthusiasm level is amazing. I love it. And thank you, Abby, and to the Midwest District for putting together this conversation. Since this is the Midwest District, I'm assuming you guys have a little bit more familiarity with Hy-Vee and who we are, as opposed to when I'm talking to folks from the South, I say we're like the Publix of the Midwest, and that kind of gets them. But we have 180 stores and 90,000 employees in 8 different states. And those employees range all the way from our president, chairman, and CEO to the 16-year-old part-time checker that's at a store in Lamoni, Iowa. And so that was an incredible challenge when it came to communicating how life was going to change with COVID and how life was going to change dramatically with COVID. So there's no way to get to all of our employees at once. You know, that 15-year-old checker doesn't have an email address. And so we're relying on our store leaders, our district and our regional leaders to communicate information to them and to communicate their concerns back to us, because our primary concern is keeping customers safe and keeping our employees safe, because they are essential. They're frontline workers. They're right there with the customer. And just as Liz touched on, those customers, you know, run the range of COVID preparedness and awareness. And so we're trying to make sure that we're doing everything we can and communicating everything we can about our safety measures. So we wanted to take information directly to those employees at all levels. We were updating them around mask policies. We had a company-wide mask policy initially. So there's just no room for negotiation. Everybody in the store is going to wear a mask. We had plexiglass barriers put up at the cash registers, at the pharmacies. Lots of those are still in place. We had social distancing floor decals, and all of these went into place within about 10 days after the pandemic kind of hit the Midwest. And luckily we had a network of other retailers around the country that we could see how they were responding and adapt our response as well. And so we could communicate that to our store leaders. They were getting daily email updates with new policies, new procedures, new versions of the signage. We were posting policies and procedures on our company intranet site, where our employees were used to going for those kinds of training and policy materials. And then we had planned to roll out a new retail communications tool. It's called Retail Zipline, which was designed specifically for the retail environment. And we had a nice rollout plan that was going to happen all through 2020. And what do they say about the best laid plans? We just dove right in, and Retail Zipline got pushed out because it has a desktop and a mobile iteration. Employees could download that directly to their mobile device, and we could communicate information right to those frontline retail employees that didn't have a company email and that may not see their store manager through the course of their shift. So we could push information directly to them through Retail Zipline. I would have loved to have had a phased rollout approach to increase adoption, but that was a luxury we didn't have through COVID. So we're still kind of figuring out how to increase Zipline adoption and usage, but it was a tool we definitely made use of when we were trying to get information out to folks. Our CEO wanted to be able to talk directly to all 90,000 employees. And so he would put out a weekly video. We'd have video updates that went out on our social channels so that our customers and employees were all hearing the same message about store safety measures and things that were happening at their Hy-Vee at the local level. So, and we're still navigating how employee communications are going to play a role in our COVID response, because now we're all dealing with vaccine mandates and lessons that we're learning on the fly here. So that's how we responded or continuing to evolve our response here at Hy-Vee.
So Hy-Vee, you kind of started touching on how that communication strategy differed between the employees who could not work from home and those who did. So tell us a little more about maybe the different things that those who are working from home, maybe from the corporate side, how did you handle communications with them? How is that different from what you heard in the store?
I mean, things worked fairly well here at our corporate office. We are, because we are such a large company and we're headquartered here in West Des Moines, Iowa, but we've got 3 different offices here. So we're used to, emailing and Zooming with people who are literally on the other side of town. That was new, but we still do it because it works really well, even when it's a 20-minute drive. But the biggest change I would think is, or kind of a cultural shift, is with the push to the retail level, getting information directly in front of employees on their mobile devices. That's essentially a public statement, which I guess maybe we were naive in thinking that, well, it's just employee information. All it takes is turning that phone around to a reporter in your local market, and Hy-Vee's making a public statement about COVID. So that was something we learned really quickly, that anything we're pushing out to employees, we have to assume is going to be basically our public stance. So it wasn't just our little Hy-Vee family that we were communicating to anymore. So that was a big kind of a mindset shift for us.
Liz, I'd like to hear from you on that topic too, since you did touch on how you had people in the plants who couldn't go home. How was it communicating between them and those people who were, and how did you change strategies based on where people were located?
It's a great question. Thanks, Abby. So for my fellow Iowa peers, I'm sorry I'm going to bring up the tornado. You're probably tired of hearing about this. However, just a little context for everyone else on the call today. Our organization was hit with a huge tornado in 2018. It took out 400,000 square feet of manufacturing. Thankfully, no one was injured, but we had thousands of people on site. Anyway, long story short, we learned a lot in a matter of minutes. One thing that we did not have at that point in time was a way to truly connect with our team members outside of whether it's like their face-to-face with their manager, if it's on the production line, or if it's on their computers in a corporate setting. Now with 400,000 square feet gone, we needed to try and reach team members who no longer had access because their workspace is in shambles, right? So that really spurred us to do the work of getting an app in place. And just like Hy-Vee, we actually had just rolled out our app in February. I mean, the timing could not have been better. We launched it, people embraced it, and then March it, and all of a sudden we were at like over 85%, of our team members using this app. I think so being able to connect to our team, not at their place of work. So also, we're on different shifts. I know my panelists also are dealing with that too. So no longer is corporate communication this like formal statement that goes out at 8 a.m. or 3 p.m. on a Friday. It is evolving, it is changing. Being able to access, our team and give them that information in real time is hugely important. We were doing similar things, videos from our CEO. We were also balancing different global locations. So we have a location in China, we have a location in the Netherlands, so we're dealing with all different types of audiences who are in different situations. And we saw that too, as it transpired here in the US specifically. We saw that our team members, our office team members, who we said within, a day, like, if you're able to work from home, pack up, go home. We will, as we all assume, this is going to be a 2-week deal. We'll figure it out. You'll be back soon, right? Well, all of a sudden our team was at home, and now we had managers who didn't know how to really lead a team well. We had team members who were struggling with, to stay connected. People who live for the water cooler all of a sudden no longer have a water cooler, right? So what we really try to do is we try to think about these two different audiences and how do we take care of them. So we have people who are coming on site, they're having to be here. They don't necessarily want to be here. We have people who are at home. They don't necessarily want to be at home, but that's where they're at. And so really taking care of them. So we really had to think about our production team members. What are their needs? How can we meet that? Really targeting our communications for them, as well as then taking our team members working at home. What resources can we provide? We were setting up different like Teams chats. We were having our leadership hosting kind of small happy hours for their teams, really trying to encourage what are you missing in both of these spaces, and how do we at least bring it back to some type of level that sticks with who we are as a team and what we believe as a culture.
Thank you. So, you know, the pandemic didn't stop any of the other things going on. After a while, we still had all of our important business initiatives, business goals. Of course, a huge focus on DEI that started with the social justice movements of last year. Attracting and retaining employees is something that many companies are dealing with. So, panelists, this question is for all of you. How did you balance the many competing communications needs and build excitement and engagement around them when, you know, COVID was still a concern? How did you kind of focus on those other business needs that your companies and organizations certainly had?
Thanks, Abby. All of the things that you just mentioned are things that our organization works on. So we're an economic development and community development organization. We support small businesses. We support global DSM and inclusion in our community. We support employment and workforce. We support downtown events like our downtown Des Moines Farmers Market and all those vibrancy type things that get people downtown. So we had a real challenge in communicating out everything that we needed to externally and keep things moving along as they needed. One thing that we did was our CEO did a really great job of honing in on the 3 things that we needed to focus on as an organization that really drove us to make decisions. And that was keep businesses in business, keep people working, and keep our community healthy. And based off those, we then created a short-term strategic plan that would allow us to connect with the audiences that we needed to and communicate with them effectively. And basically what we did is we broke down basic PR 101. We broke down by audience and the needs that they had, and then determined the best ways to most effectively reach them, right? And then worked really quickly to make those things happen. So we created a COVID response hub for small businesses because we needed to support them wholeheartedly. We then created a DSM local initiative to get the community to rally behind supporting small businesses. So all of these tactics layering back into what we were trying to accomplish as an organization. And I think in addition to that and that strategic plan and activating that, and of course, measuring it as frequently as we could, because it was go, 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 get it done, and rightfully so. We also felt this sense from the entire Greater Des Moines region, like we needed something that really brought us together because it was hard. It was so hard last year on multiple fronts. And so one of our biggest initiatives from a communication standpoint was to create DSM Strong and rally the community behind being there for one another, whether it is a small business or it is helping someone find a job. So basically, we all worked really hard to make sure that we were communicating effectively. And looking back now, it's always inspiring to me to see how our team came together to support the community and all the really great things that we did, not only at our organization, but like across our entire region.
I guess I can follow up on that, Courtney, because we had a lot of those same opportunities to give back to our communities that had supported us for so long. Come March of 2020, there are no restaurants open. There are no schools serving lunches. So we had dozens of suppliers coming to us saying, we have all this food. and no one can use it. Can you help us? So we had an opportunity through our store network to organize all kinds of produce giveaways and just any kind of perishables that our suppliers said, we don't want to get rid of this stuff. Can you help us give it to people who need it? So we had the people lined up at Arrowhead Stadium getting free peaches because it's what we had. And we were able to use our social media and our advertising channels to let people know about these kinds of events. And we tried to carry that spirit all through the last 18 months, you know, with different meal giveaways and different service projects, because that's where our people shine. I mean, our Hy-Vee people are amazing at giving back to the communities that support them. And so that was a way to keep us engaged, keep us focused. A lot of our operational leaders here at our headquarters came up through the stores. You know, they're used to visiting stores and interacting, and it gave them a chance to get back out. Since most of these events were in the spring and summer, they were outdoors. You know, we could be distanced and they could see each other and they could interact with customers, which is something they were really missing when we were all kind of scattered to the winds last spring. And we've kept that up with those larger scale events because we've seen how great our stores are at implementing those. And it's part of our culture, and it's part of what really helped them remember who they were and why they wanted to work at Hy-Vee. And now we're excited. We've been able to bring back kind of smaller scale events when we open a new store. You know, we typically will do a pre-opening meeting with all the new employees. We've had to adapt those a little bit depending on local regulations and COVID case numbers in local markets. But we figured out, you know, can we bring people in shifts? Can we record our CEO's speech and share it with people on Zipline? And we're kind of slowly easing back into those events because people have missed each other. So we figured out how to keep them connected and keep them connected to our mission here, making lives easier, healthier, happier. How do we do that regardless of what's going on in the world around us?
Yeah, I think one of those things that happened with all of us, with some of us that were able to work remotely, that were normally in the office, it really daylighted the importance of just trying to stay connected. I think really people just miss the eye-to-eye, face-to-face interaction. I love virtual. I mean, it allows a lot of flexibility, but there is something to be said when you can just have a real-time conversation in real life with someone. And sometimes when you don't have that, it can chip away at relationships and culture. So for us, we were really challenged at looking at how do we continue to build that engagement and that excitement when we're so far apart, right? Trying to balance that. So we continued with looking at swarming events. So those were focused, they were internal development, learning opportunities, meetups for specific disciplines. So for instance, this year we did host an architecture swarming event, architecture and interior design. So it brought together all of the architects, all of the interior designers from all across the company so that they could finally meet, talk, learn, grow from one another. Because those are the kind of like the serendipitous moments that really add brilliance to your culture and to your company. And so I think focusing on that was just really important to just revitalize, re-engage, and just continue fostering a positive culture to be a part of, regardless of where you're at.
Yeah, just to add, I think everyone summed it up really well. I think for us, we have all these initiatives, but really what it comes down to is how do we advance our brand and who we are? And right, as we talk about the work that we were trying to do. And so for us, we say that like people are our greatest asset. Taking care of our team is what matters most. And so it was just, how did we get creative to take our normal, so if, we have to offer screenings, how do we make it the best experience for our team? How do we have to, these little things, in the summer, we often offer a fun activity for our team members' families. Well, that couldn't happen. Everything was shut down. So we gave away pizza and pop packages for families to have a night in together, so it's little things of how do you if taking care of our people is our goal, how do you get creative? And that's what we do, right? We're brand ambassadors, we're corporate comms, we got a little marketing in us. How do you take that and take what the world gives us, which is a horrible pandemic, and say, I'm going to use this opportunity to reinforce who we are and what we believe. So that's probably the biggest takeaway for us.
I love hearing all this. I love how you've all talked about how your company culture and your values really helped guide you through a challenging time. And I think that's important to why we put those together in the first place and why we do so much to communicate them when times are good. So again, another question for all of you. Knowing what you know now, what is one part of your COVID communication strategy that you would have approached differently?
I find this question to be very challenging because I feel like we did so much and we did it so fast, and to go back and to evaluate it, which I mean we have, right? But I think that after some time, looking back on it now, I feel like we moved so quickly into problem solving and being there for our team and being there for our investors and members. I do feel like at times it was difficult to, in the moment, comprehend like what was really happening in the world, especially while I had 3 kids under the age of 8 who were coloring on the walls in my house, you know? So I feel like it's a true story. I feel like there wasn't a lot of time to like really put my arms around the situation, or the comms team here, or even our organization, to like really deal with the way it was affecting us emotionally. So I think that's probably what my answer would be, Abby. I think that, you know, just giving a little bit more space, but I don't know if I'd be able to do that just because I also understood the need that everyone else had too.
That's funny, Courtney. I saw that question. We were given a few of these ahead of time. And so I was stumped. I was like, I don't know what I would do differently. Not because we were perfect, but everything we like learned along the way. And so anyway, so I reached out to my team because I'm like, maybe they know, give me some inspiration, right? This is why we have teams, right? Anyway, so I reached out to my team, and my coworker, Jordan, she said, I think at the beginning we forced ourselves to react so fast that like we had to problem solve, we had to react, and we had to do it, and we had to get something out immediately. I don't know that we needed to react as quickly as we did. And she wrote that, and I thought, that is interesting. I don't agree with her. So, you know, it's just kind of funny, like, so she kind of feels that way. And then I struggle too, thinking back, like, but what I'm also equally passionate about is that our team will hear it from us first before anyone else, no holds barred. Like, that is what I'm passionate about. So it's just kind of funny, the different, even within my own team, of how we are viewing. It was just a constantly evolving thing, and we were all learning and growing, and now here we are 18 months later. So yeah, something.
Man, that is a great observation, Liz. I'm sitting here going, I think we got stuck in the same trap where you spent 18 months just reacting and reacting and reacting, and figuring they got to hear it from us. We need to be, you know, their source of communication, because wow, we all know how many other channels are competing for our employees and our customers' attention, and the varying levels of accurate information they're going to get. And I think it's a tough habit to break because we've been doing it for 18 months. And even now, you know, we've got, every time my poor colleagues who are handling all of our COVID vaccinations and our flu shot clinics, they keep saying that, you know, they're on vaccine island and they just can't escape. Because literally it changes every day. And just when we were in a groove, now, hey, we got pediatric doses, and now we've got CDC guidance on boosters, but we don't follow the CDC, we follow the FDA. And so how do we keep our pharmacy teams, number one, up to speed, and then customers who, you know, are dealing with concerns around the vaccine and availability and scheduling, and we're just reacting all the time. And so now when it comes to communicating with our employees about the potential of the OSHA vaccine regulations, we're still kind of stuck in that loop of we got to let them know. And it's just a challenge to especially for something that big and that sensitive, to stop just reacting and be more strategic and take that break mentally, emotionally, you know, and just go, okay, guys, we got to talk this through. So that's, yeah, I think the biggest lesson is, and I don't think I had that level of clarity until you said that, Liz. So thank you. That we've just been so reactive for so long. How do we get back to being more strategic when it comes to COVID and whatever the next challenge is going to be?
Yeah, I think we're kind of stuck in the MacGyver mode. Like, how do we make do with what we have to react to the situation that's going on? You know, give me that paper clip and chewing gum, and I'm going to fix that mandate, right? So no, that's going to take a little bit more than that. But yeah, I think, you know, we've MacGyvered through this. You know, we've kind of gotten through that first hump, but there just seems to be continual humps, right? And one of those things I kind of think about is like, are we fatigued? Are we exhausted? But we just cannot stop because that's core of our role. If I were to take a look back, I would still continue to MacGyver because it worked really well, but I probably would have advocated for, we have an app that's tied to our employee intranet. Again, that was the hub of everything. And what we normally would do is just make it a suggestion, right? Like, hey, download the app. This is during the before times, which everyone remembers, I'm sure. During the before times, we just made it a suggestion and, you know, download it if you want. It's a great little tool. But I think one of the things that we could have done in the beginning is advocate for making that something that everyone did early on so that they could have instant access to information. So as tired as we are with pushing out the updates and maybe they're tired of reading it, but everyone to have the same access point.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to do 2 more questions before we open it up to everyone else. Again, questions for the whole panel. How do you think this collective sustained crisis experience will shape our industry and how PR people approach future crises?
I really like this question that you asked, Abby, because I was really tired and I was like, okay, we're gonna have to think a little bit harder about this. But that was one thing, was just finding the energy to keep going, right? Like we just can't like slack off when things are looking a little bit better. Like we still have to keep where we were. What I really liked that came out of this was because we were all just trying to figure it out, the transparency to learn and share from one another was totally there. Like there was no putting cookies in the cookie jar, like, oh, you don't get to see my magical plan, right? Because that wasn't going to benefit anybody. And so everyone was just very willing to share what was working, what wasn't working, because we didn't have the time. There was no luxury of time. We needed to keep people safe and healthy, and that was a top priority. So I really love that, you know, things like this are happening, you know, and continue to happen where we can just learn and grow from one another. I also think what's really cool and beneficial for our PR industry as a whole is people getting really smart about who's actually telling you that information. You know, there's so much misinformation out there that's just hitting everybody at work, at home. And so it's gotten people a lot more savvy about, hey, is that actually a credible resource? Is that something, you know, I should be looking at and reading and referencing? And so I hopefully those lessons learned will continue throughout.
I love that, Jenny, and I have some similar feelings about that as well. I feel like our industry, like we shined. I feel like we just like showed everyone like the true benefit of the work that we do. You know, I felt like, you know, we had a spot at the table, but like we had a real big important role in communicating internally and externally. And I think we've been seen as an asset, but I think that we really were elevated and had the opportunity to really show what we're worth. And I think we've done that in the past, don't get me wrong, but I just think the value was really there. And I don't think it was just like, I love that it was like not only our industry, but like also like our teams too, you know, we're just lifted up. And I think that's something really special. And I'm glad that I saw that and felt that coming through this, even though it was very difficult.
I've said that on numerous occasions, Courtney, as we come into this new phase of the pandemic, is everybody on this call knows that corporate communications workers are essential. But we really proved it during the pandemic. Yeah, I feel like our entire profession was elevated to a new level. And, you know, I talked about the daily emails that came out from store leaders. They didn't come from our chief health officer. They came from our SVP of communications, because people knew she's going to shoot it to you straight. She's going to give you the media talking points. She's the person who's going to have that messaging. And so now we've made ourselves so essential. We're like, you need us to write that too? Really? You guys can't do it yourself? I don't know if we've kind of trained them into that, but they know, they know that their corporate communications team is there for them. They're going to have the right message and you can depend on them. And I think they knew that before, but they've lived it. They've learned it. And it's just taken our team to a whole nother level. And just huge shouts, as I said, to my colleagues who've managed our vaccine response, because our communication efforts, our community relations, the CDC is sharing our stories across the country. The messaging that we're putting out and the way that we're engaging with our employees and with our customers. So just, they're awesome. I think they're fantastic. And please schedule your booster with your local Hy-Vee pharmacy.
Had my booster shot last week. It was not bad, just to be clear. So it's great. So anybody who was worried about it, anyway, so that's where I stand. Sorry, not to get political. Anyway, I don't really have a lot to add on top of what everyone has said already. I really think, yeah, I don't think I have much to add. Everyone said things really, really well. So I think too, actually, that source of truth, Jenny, you mentioned that was the piece like that I really, really see, like even as we're going through this ETS, like I have a draft right now sitting on the screen that's right next to me. That's, what does it mean that, the Sixth Circuit Court was selected for the lottery? And what is it, like our team now expects us to walk through in an unbiased way what we know and what we can share. And that is now the expectation. And that is where, news is coming from. Now, don't get me wrong. We're getting a lot of like, well, I read this and I saw this and and we let that chatter happen too. But moving forward, we have been, and more than ever, we will continue to be that source of truth, that source of information that our team needs. So, yeah.
Great takeaways. Okay, so before we get to the audience questions, final question, what would you consider to be your biggest or most valuable employee communications lessons learned over the last 18 months? Liz, let's start with you.
I have like 5 things that I quick jotted down, but I'll try and keep it short. I think number 1 is you cannot over communicate. We learned that with the tornado. We saw that again with COVID. Even though things were changing constantly, we were putting out daily emails. Our CEO was doing a video every week, and it felt crazy. It even felt like, just because sometimes we weren't even saying anything differently, or there wasn't new information, but we just had to reinforce messaging. But it was unbelievable. And, because we had the app, we could track the people who were watching, and it was being consumed. So I think you cannot over communicate. You feel like you're over communicating. You are not. Keep saying it. I think right now, and this is something that I will just share that I personally am struggling with, is how do you remove any and all bias from the communications that you write? Like, there are a lot of feelings about this mandate. There are a lot of feelings within leadership and different leaders around this mandate. Everything right now is so political. Really, really reading, rereading, evaluating every word that you are putting out. Hy-Vee said it, when it is on somebody's phone and they can flip it around, that is a formal statement. So you need to make sure that what you are putting out is something that you can stand behind. It's kind of like PR 101, but it is just more than ever. That is so critical. So that's just something that I'm personally working through. And then I've said it multiple times, and I will only say it really quickly one more time. The brand is what is like the foundation for everything. You just build on top of that, right? We just react through that lens of, it is our job to carry that culture. We are leading that. And so continuing to do that is just, it is critical in a crisis, and it's critical every day, but now more than ever. So huge shout out to all you communicators, because it is a big deal what you do.
Thanks, Jenny.
I think it's about wellness, just that it was so important to look at all my colleagues and how are they doing holding up through all this. And it's beyond just how are they doing physically, but also looking at their social needs, their emotional needs as well, because I think work provides a lot of that and it can be a source of respite for them. And so one of the things, we try to do is, advocate for leadership to reach out to all of their people, take that extra effort to plan and reach everyone wherever they're at. You've got to take advantage of all the technology available and meet with people. Because if you can get them to see you, that you care and are concerned, you're going to have a fully engaged employee, which makes for a stronger organization that can survive this. And so it's important to take that time to meet with each person on a very individual level. Even if it's virtual, it still counts. You gotta do it. Because I think all of us are facing, issues of like retaining really good talent. And so if you're not working at that now when they're at their most exhausted moment, somebody else will do it. So, you have to embrace your core values of your company and take care of your people.
Thank you, Jenny. And Jenny, I know has to leave a little early, so if you have to jump off, please feel free. And thank you so much for participating today. Great insights.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Okay, Courtney, biggest lesson learned.
I think that one thing that I learned is you have to be ready for the sprint and the marathon. And because it was very fast paced. I think our industry is very fast paced for the most part too. But you have to train yourself to be persistent and to continually give your all every single day. And even with that said too, I'll use another running term that one of our leaders likes to share is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go slow, if you want to go far, go together. And so at times you had to decide what you as a leader of your team and your organization needs to get done, and when you need to work with your team, your organization to get things done. And I think that one thing that I instituted early on was what we called daily check-ins. So at every morning when we would have our team meetings, people would report out on their workloads. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how full you were for the day. So if you are over capacity, you're at a 10 and the team knows where you are. Or if you're at an 8 and you can take on a little bit more work. So maybe the 8 and the 10 can work together to kind of help even that out, even out that workload. And then the second number we reported out was from a mental health standpoint, where are you from a 1 to a 100%? 100% is like your best self. And so a lot of times we'd have people who are like, I'm going to be real honest, I'm at 50% today. And we were okay with that. Say we understand where you are. And that person would commit to giving 100% of that 50% that they had to give. And so just being able to go far together with your team and understanding where they are and checking in with them, and being in it for the long haul and the marathon, I think those are the things that I really took away most of all.
Great, thanks. Hy-Vee, wrap us up.
Yeah, I'll echo, I think what Liz said is that communicate. If you think you've said it before, you probably need to say it 3 more times. Because again, we kept putting out the same messages. And the one thing we learned is sometimes low tech is the best tech. We had beautiful videos of our leaders, we're pushing it out through an app and putting it out on social media. And sometimes, frankly, most of the time, the most effective thing is a poster by the time clock, because everybody's going to see it. And I think because all the new tools are sometimes so shiny that we get distracted, and those low tech communication channels sometimes get kind of the tail end of our strategy and our content writing, and they just can't. because sometimes that's the most effective tool you've got in your toolbox. So don't discount direct mail. That's the best way we could get to all of our people. Time clock posters. We know, the majority of our folks are going to see that. Is it clear? Is it consistent? Do they know what to do after they've read it? Because frankly, that's caught us off guard sometimes. So don't discount your low tech tools, because sometimes they're the best ones you've got.
Awesome. Such great insights. Thank you all. We do have a couple questions in the chat. If you have one, feel free to put it in. We'll try to get to it in the last 10 minutes we have so here. So we'll just start with the first that came in, and anyone feel free to jump in. What was your relationship with public health officials?
I'll go. We had a relationship with public health. Does that answer it? I would say we engaged public health as soon as we could. We have a clinic on site here at our headquarters, and so we were working with public health already in earlier, well before a vaccine was available, just to say, like, we want to help, how we can be one of these places that we can provide clinics. We helped give, like, for first responders. It was just interesting. I think from a corporate perspective, we are kind of a go fast, go lean. How can, we're manufacturing, right? Like, we go to tag time and things. So it was, they just definitely have a different working style, to be completely honest. But we vaccinated our community and we did it together, and that is absolutely what matters most. So.
Yeah, I'd echo those same learnings, Liz. We were partnering obviously with, all of our state and county health officials, especially as the vaccine rollout became, about this time last year, it became more and more of a reality. And I think we wore out our arms going, we can help. We got the capacity, we got the people. We have 9 Winnebagos that we can outfit and send out to rural areas with pharmacists and technicians. And we hired part-time nurses from all of our metro areas to help administer vaccines. And our public health infrastructure just moves at a different speed. And I think with retail, with manufacturing, we're about efficiencies, we're about serving customers, we're about getting stuff out the door. And so it was just a big learning experience. And we're managing 8 states. And, the vaccine allocation came down differently. Some people did it statewide, some people did it by county. So that was another communication challenge of helping both our pharmacy teams and our customers in each area figure out, why can't I get a vaccine? Well, because your state allocates it differently than the state next door. So that was another challenge. And again, I'm just going to worship the ground that my colleagues walk on who managed our vaccine rollout, because they kept all of that straight and communicated it to our pharmacists, who could talk to the patient on the phone who wants to know when they're going to get a vaccine. So that was a huge learning that we're definitely going to be able to leverage. Hopefully this is a once in a lifetime pandemic for all of us, but it's a good learning when we're dealing with state, local, and federal officials on any issue.
Hy-Vee, I also will worship that ground that they walk on, because it was so impressive. Because I can't imagine, like, all the work that went into the vaccine rollout and all the work they're continuing to do too. But yeah, amazing job. For us, we have a really good relationship with Polk County Health Department, and we would have weekly or every other week meetings with their organization and talking about, what do you need? What do you see? How can we help you? So we worked with Polk County to roll out a masking campaign. This was like earlier days where people were like, do I wear a mask? Do I not wear a mask? Like, what are we doing with masks? So we launched Mask Up DSM and pushed that out all across the region to encourage mask wearing, because that was a real big challenge at the beginning of the pandemic. We also hosted weekly conversations with the CEOs of our major hospital networks here. So from Mercy Point and Mercy One and Unity Point, and we would have their CEOs speak about the current status of where things stood for our region. And so we worked closely with the hospitals as well to share out what they were seeing and what they were needing with our external and internal audiences for that matter. So those are just a couple examples.
How are you planning for the future? The next global episode, which I think Hy-Vee just said, hopefully it's once in a lifetime, but knowing what we know, being prepared, how are you planning ahead?
I think, as we've mentioned, just the importance of communication. And it's just such a brave new world. I know Jenny touched on all the sources of information and disinformation, and just, I think maintaining the credibility that we've talked about, that we've built with our employees and with our customers, so that they know we're going to shoot you straight, because we know trust is built over a lifetime and lost in a moment. So how do we make sure we stay that single source of truth? And it's, I mean, we all know it's a tightrope that we're walking, and we can fall off on either side. But I think maintaining that trust with our employees, and not, finding the balance between we have to communicate information all the time, and how are we making sure we're still communicating information of value so they stay listening.
Okay, we have one final question here in the chat, and maybe quick responses before we wrap up for today. So almost universally, companies are dealing with staffing shortages and keeping staff engaged. Do you have creative ideas for engaging staff and communicating that people focus these days? What's working and authentic? What's new? What new content have you introduced that builds up culture? More than one question, lots of questions all in one.
I'll take a quick stab at this. So obviously part of my role is also talent acquisition, which means getting people into our organization as well. So if anyone is passionate about a retention number, it is yours truly, or my team actually probably who's doing the recruiting. But, we've just done a number of things. And actually I did see the second question pop up too, that's if we're conducting culture climate surveys. So maybe I'll kind of try and package my answers a little bit. Yes, is the answer. We did do various surveys to our team. We actually follow the Gallup Q12. They have like a yearly engagement survey that we do with our team. This past year, we actually bumped it up to quarterly, and we added a couple different questions on each time. So this is an anonymous survey. However, it gives us kind of a quick pulse. We can divide the information into areas of the business. And so we looked really closely. So things we were asking about were, how productive you feel, how collaborative you feel, if your needs were being met, things like that. And so we watched that really closely, and we have taken a number of action steps based on some of that and different things that we are continuing to do. For us, we saw out in production a great opportunity. How do we actually train up our managers we believe that if we train up our managers to be better leaders, they'll be able to better communicate and work with their teams, which should help drive some of that retention. That's just one quick example for us, but it ranges from, whether it's like various education opportunities, whether it's, what do we need to do to change the actual physical spaces within our offices now that we have kind of a hybrid option. There's a number of things we're doing, and I'm happy to talk about that at another time offline or send questions or anyway, but hope that kind of gives a little context.
Yeah, we've done numerous employee engagement surveys over the last 18 months, just to make sure our people know that we want them to keep working for us and that we're taking good care of them. So we've really beefed up, wages, obviously we've gone through a complete company-wide wage realignment. We have to, everybody does. And we've beefed up our employee benefits offerings in terms of tuition assistance and childcare benefits. And we launched our employee discount in December of 2019. Everybody thinks if you work for Hy-Vee, you get your groceries cheaper, and you didn't until December of 2019. But making sure our employees know about that and that we're reporting out regularly, hey, your location has given back X number of dollars in employee discounts over the last quarter. Because we feel like that's important. You know, that's something you get when you work for Hy-Vee that you wouldn't if you didn't. So just making sure that we're always asking, how can we make your job better? From a benefits perspective, from a store condition perspective. We've beefed up our employee engagement staff here. We've got some new folks coming on that are focused on engaging employees at the retail level and here at corporate. Because we know the war for talent is real and it's competitive. So we want to make sure that we're keeping people part of the Hy-Vee family. So.
Great.
I have to jet, but I have a real quick response. We are a much smaller unit. So our organization is a nonprofit and we're made of about 45 people. But we have a culture committee and they do ongoing surveys to get a status check of where we stand and test out ideas and things of that nature. Really where our work is focused on is more for the Greater Moines region itself and attracting people here and getting workforce here. So we have kind of twofold issue there, or opportunity, I should say. But yes, to all those things, workforce and culture is just so important. And I know all of us have talked about like the values that our organization has and just infusing that into what we do internally. And I think that's a huge benefit to our workforce and to our teams as well.
Thanks so much, Courtney. Thanks to all of our panelists for joining today. Great insights, great takeaways. To everyone on the call, I hope you have learned something new today and gotten some great takeaways that you can consider as you continue to work through your COVID responses and just apply to other communications needs. So thank you, Liz. Thank you, Hy-Vee. Thank you, Courtney. And thanks again, even the PRSA Midwest District for hosting today.
Well, thank you to all the panelists. This has been a really interesting discussion for me because I don't do internal communications, so I learned a lot here. But I just want to update, this is halfway through the Midwest District Week, and we have events coming up today. It's the Color of Communication, hosted by the St. Louis chapter. We also have a happy hour on networking through PRSA, and that's free to all attendees. Then tomorrow we've got crisis communication, countering misinformation, and then building career skills to advance your career, as well as a happy hour for going solo. And then on Friday, our last two events are expanding content through beyond traditional methods and how to host a virtual and hybrid event. So hopefully everyone could join us. But thank you very much today and thank you for attending. Goodbye, everyone.